When I first sat down with James Altucher, I wasn't really sure what direction this conversation would go, and it went a lot of directions. The guy is absolutely brilliant. And whether we were talking about building online games or the need for continuing education, cryptocurrency, the president, or any number of other topics, it seemed like we just went down one rabbit hole after another. So get ready to settle in. This is going to be probing, thoughtful, and insightful as we get into the mind of a best selling author, an entrepreneur, a venture capitalist, a podcaster, and a really great thinker, Mr. James Altucher. Buckle up.
Please keep clear of the doors. You are delaying the departure of this train.
I have two gifts for you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. The first one is a New York City lottery ticket.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, this could be the big one.
I'll hold on to it so I can daydream all day.
Well,
that I might win.
if you ever lose it all again, this could be the new beginning.
It could be, yeah.
And then
I'm gonna lose it all again. That's a guarantee.
here's the.
Bad
I
Crypto
can't
Podcast.
imagine that on your head, though. I mean, with your hair, I don't. Oh, wow! There we go. That actually works. That actually works well.
Bad Crypto Podcast.
It's true.
Representing.
The geeks really did inherit the earth, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
What? When did
when I was a kid, I never considered myself a geek or a nerd, but now, because these things have become a little bit more positive in our culture now, people have embraced those words, but they were not really like friendly words when we were younger. I don't know how old you are.
Yeah, I'm 55. We're close to the same age, right? You're
I'm 52.
52. Okay,
Yeah.
so when I was in high school, freshman year, I took CS 101, and they had COBOL punch cards.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and then they were gone. The next year, they brought the Apple IIes
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
So, what was your first computer?
An Apple II Plus.
And were you a coder? You were like an engineer, right?
Yeah, but not till later. And I switched. My first program to computer the summer before my junior year of college, and then I switched majors halfway through my junior year and finished out with a CS major. Then went to grad school in CS.
And got
then
a
I was-
job doing,
Hmm?
and you got a job working as a programmer.
Yeah. I was a programmer. I had started a company, 2 software companies, 3 software companies. So depending how you define software.
Was it natural? I mean, for me, I loved using computers. I had a TRS-80, but my coding was like line 10. It was basic. Line 10, print hello. Line 20, go to 10. And that was, about it.
Yeah, that's good.
No, it wasn't. It was. I realized, I
You
love
could have
these
gone
things.
more. I mean, if you wanted to, probably.
I don't know that I have the machine brain. I have the entrepreneurial and marketer's brain.
Yeah, that could be. I wonder if they're connected because there's both involve some kind of spatial relationships, right? Like if you
Mhm.
do, if you use these words in a marketing campaign or an ad, you'll get this response. If you use these words in a marketing campaign or ad, you'll get this response. If you get the bigger response, double down here. It's a very logical if-then way of thinking.
Do you see that in your mind's eye as a coder? Do you envision this whole chart of
Yes.
if-thens?
Yeah, because what happens is I don't know how it is now, but now they have very different kind of programming environments that keep track of everything for you and help you debug. Back then in the olden days, let's say 20 to 35 years ago, you had to kind of keep track of if you were at like a 2,000 line or a 10,000 line piece of code, you kind of had to keep track of everything in your head. And if there was a bug, you kind of had to know which parts of the code affected which other parts. So you were encouraged to document very thoroughly. So it was easy to track. I was horrible at documenting. I wrote really messy code, but I was very fast because that was my skill set, was basically to keep track of all of it in my head and debug very quickly. But ultimately, it's a young man doing it. Programming that way is a young man's game. And by the time I was 30, it was it was too tiring for me.
It's kind of like the old school architect, my father, who's 84 and still with us, always used drawing boards, never learned CAD. But it's that type of shift, isn't it? It's like going from this manual drawing with your hand in T-squares to clicking.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. So even when I've programmed, let's say in the past 20 years, I've tried to use as kind of close to the machine environment as I can, because I can't actually handle the easy ways where you drag code around and it clicks into place and keeps track of all your potential bugs. Like I just have to do it the old fashioned way. But it's very tiring that way because the brain sort of as you get older, the brain sort of loses kind of its direct tactical, you know, I don't know what you call it,
Well, we're
arsenal.
losing brain cells as we speak,
Yeah,
right? I can't even find the
but
words.
you do get kind of more intuition and wisdom,
Mhm.
you know, you also
Hopefully.
hopefully, you also cement some bad mistakes, but you kind of learn you go have enough experiences, hopefully, that you learn through some bad mistakes and bad habits. But in terms of, like, direct tactical things like programming or let's say a game like chess, you better set yourself up to rely on intuition and not, not brute force brain power.
There is this thing about getting older, right? And there was an article I saw this morning, and I won't tell you who wrote it. It was on
Did
business.
I write it? Because I could have
No,
forgotten. That's the
no.
problem with getting
You
older.
you did not write it, but I had to make a post and a comment about it on Facebook. The title of the article was "If your friends don't talk about money, you need new friends."
Huh. That's interesting.
Just based on the title alone, what do you think of that?
Well, I don't know what the audience is of that article, but I know for me and all of my friends, all we've ever talked about is money. Now, it's not the only thing, but money has always been on the table for discussion if we ever get together. So how much each person is worth? Is it enough? How do you make more? What do you think of this idea? Like this is always brewing somewhere in the conversation. Not in a boring way, not in like, oh, I need to buy a yacht, so I gotta like make this money. Not like that, more like, you know, is this enough to survive and feed your family? If bad things happen, what do you think of this idea? Do you think this will make money? Is this a better idea than this idea? Will this take too much time, too much money, and so on? And again, it's not the main topic of conversation, but money becomes an ancillary product of creativity in some cases for me and many of my friends. Like if you know creativity and finding kind of meaning in whatever you're doing is always the most important thing. An ancillary effect of doing it well, whatever it is you're doing, is that it should be able to pay for itself ultimately, and you should be able to make some money. So we're doing a podcast, and podcast is I spend a lot of time each week doing a podcast and doing writing. On the surface, none of these things make money or should make money. But if you do it well enough, then over time you figure out how to monetize, and then you figure out one way to monetize, two ways, 5 ways, 10 ways, and suddenly you start monetizing all of these ways. And then podcasting might feed into the writing, might feed into other creative activities, and you have kind of a little mini business going along with whatever other businesses you have.
But that's not why you start podcasting. Right? I mean, some
No,
people
no, you
treat it as a
never you
business.
can't you won't be a good podcaster if you start for the money.
Mhm.
I didn't make any money at all on my podcast. Well, I monetize my podcast, but I have a team of people helping me. So I have yet to really make a dime on my podcast. And writing, you don't really write a book to make money from the book. You make
Mhm.
money. First off, you should write. It took me 11 years of writing almost every single day before I made a single dime from it. And so it's definitely shouldn't be the reason why you write is to make money. And then ultimately, even if you write a book that does well, you're going to make more money from, again, the side effects of writing, not the book itself. Very rarely will people make money just from their books.
Right.
So you
Um,
might make money if you write a great book, you might make money from speaking gigs, or let's say it's a work of fiction, you might option it for other things or sell it into other markets. There's lots of ways to make money from writing, but writing a book or writing articles is probably the worst way to
uh,
make money from writing.
I tend to concur, and you've written more books than me. I'm up to 15, but you've got like
15, that's
20,
a lot. I have 22.
22. So
Yeah.
your wiki needs to be updated.
Yeah. Well, you
because
know
it's a
what? I hope maybe you can help me update it because every time I change or anytime anybody changes anything in my Wikipedia page, I don't make any changes on the Wikipedia page, but I know anytime anyone makes any change, there's somebody who basically just reverses
the
it.
wiki Nazis basically
Yeah.
is what they
I
are.
mean, I can't even mention my podcast, right? So I have 540 episodes. I've been doing this podcast for almost 7 years, and, it's almost 100 million downloads at this point. I've had all sorts of people. It's been ranked, number 1 in iTunes on a couple of different occasions, and it's been mentioned in a bunch of and yet it cannot be mentioned in Wikipedia. Someone always puts it up,
Because
and
it's
someone always takes it
marketing,
down.
right? That's they think the moment that you're talking about yourself, even on your own page with your own accomplishments, that it is somehow
Well,
self-promotional.
I don't even put it there. Somebody else will put it and then tell me later, or I'll see in the history, someone put it and some unknown person. And then some unknown person immediately, like within seconds, took it down. Like, how did they even know? I guess they get notified
They
at my
get
page.
notified, yeah.
Yeah. So there was a New York Times article about me that was taken down. I have no idea why. It's a whole bunch of things that were taken
That's
down.
unusual, see, because usually what they're looking for is the sourcing,
Right.
and you've got New York Times.
There's legit sources for all of these things, and yet I don't know what the deal is. I've called people and nobody can figure it out. Like the person who is editing it has some influence.
Somebody has a vendetta,
Yeah,
an Altucher vendetta.
yeah.
Well, I can neither
Well,
confirm
many
nor
people have vendettas through no fault of my own. I
why?
think.
You're a nice guy.
I think I
You're
am too.
harmless.
I think I am too. But for some reason, people either hate me or like me. But if I get a lot of comments like, "Boy, I wish I could like that guy, but he annoys me so much." And I'm like, "What did I do to be annoying? I'm not trying to be. I'm not trying to be controversial or annoying, and I don't think I'm that controversial."
I don't think you're controversial at all. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody has
Yeah,
opinions.
you have
So
opinions.
what?
I don't know. I really have no idea.
Well, I like you.
Thank you
Eh,
so much, Sean. Thank you for reaching out and asking to do this podcast. I really appreciate it.
yeah. Well, and I can neither confirm nor deny for the record that I might be able to help with that Wikipedia page.
Yeah, don't confirm
I
or
will neither
deny.
confirm nor
I
deny
don't
because
need to know.
can't make
It's on
any
a need to know basis.
promises about that. We actually, when Travis Wright and I interviewed you for the Bad Crypto podcast, you told me that I played a role very early on in your gaming experience.
Uh,
Do you remember what it was?
I don't
I'll
remember.
jog the memory.
Yeah,
Yeah,
now that
Yahoo
we're over
Games.
50, like I can't remember anything.
Yahoo Games,
Uh,
because you played incessantly
yes.
on chess and checkers, and
Yeah.
that was I invented that.
Oh, that's right.
I'm the
So
one who sold
that's
classic
incredible.
games to Yahoo.
You know, I am extremely jealous because back in 1992, pre-web, I was thinking, it'd be great to make a collection of game servers for every game and kind of combine them into one mega area. This was pre-web, so it wasn't like a website. So for instance, the Internet Chess Club,
Yeah,
ICC.
sure.
So it was competitor eventually with the chess part of Yahoo Games,
Right.
and there was also IGC, which was the Go. There was a Go server. There was a backgammon server. I forgot what the name of that one was. So there was all these independent servers for games, and I helped develop the internet chess server, and the Go code and even the backgammon code, I think, was related to part of the code that I created for the chess server. And I was just playing chess on the chess server here. I remember thinking in 1992, this is a disaster because there's no reason for this to ever go away. Like unless you thought the internet was going to disappear or somehow get regulated against games, which was clearly not going to happen. I was addicted. Back in 1992, I was playing online chess up to 16, 17, 18 hours a day.
Holy cow!
I
On your
was
way to be a grandmaster.
or a way to just be a degenerate, and, because I would just play, like, 1-minute chess where each side gets 1 minute, and then you run out of time, and whoever loses out of time, you either lose or you get checkmated, and that's how you lose.
Mhm.
You either run out of time or you get checkmated, and so I'd play all day and night and just wouldn't go home and would lock my office door, so if my boss was banging on the door, I wouldn't answer, and I was just, like, addicted to this, and I had helped create it, and I was thinking to myself, this really sucks because 30 years from now, and here it is. I was thinking this 30 years from now, this is still going to exist. And how am I going to deal? Am I 30 years from now, am I going to be playing 18 hours a day? I don't think I can handle this. And I was correct that it would still be around because that was obvious. And I probably don't play 18 hours a day. It's probably down to 1 to 2 hours a day, but I still play every single day. But Yahoo Games, I never played on the chess part, but I played on checkers, bridge, Scrabble, hearts, Othello. I think those were the games I played on Yahoo Games.
So did you play as which avatar did you use? Do you remember?
Uh, I
I,
don't know. I had a
I'm
whole
looking
bunch.
up to see if I can find the one that'll jog your memory here in
Maybe
Google Images.
I think sometimes I had Altucher. That was my name, or
So look at the little faces, the avatar guys. So there's the one
oh
with
yeah,
the
with the
red
spades.
red cap glasses and goatee, that was me. And the blue cap with the blonde hair avatar, that was the coder, Aaron.
Huh.
See, this could have just as easily been you that I partnered with because I'm not the coder, but my webmaster knew that I was into games, and he found this little thing off in the neck, somewhere in the little creek on the internet that this UCSD guy was coding called springerspan.com, and he had a couple of his friends beta testing it. So my webmaster says, "Hey, go check out what this guy's doing." And I go to him, and my entrepreneurial brain kicks in. So I write the guy, say, "This is great. I've got a website, I've got traffic, you've got games. Let's partner up. We'll rename it, please, because
What was your website that had traffic?
worldvillage.com."
So it was kind of like a social network type of thing.
Actually, we did have an IRC room,
Uh-huh.
for way back then for our village
So,
chat, but it was a virtual village. So, but it was really for parents that wanted software reviews from a parental perspective and articles about the internet from that perspective, but
okay.
also some games.
So you had traffic. He had all the game software, but didn't have for whatever reason he wasn't the most popular game. Like if people wanted to play Hearts on the internet, where would they go?
Oh, yeah, there wasn't. And he didn't really, he wasn't, it was just an experiment for him. He had a couple friends. So I approached him. I said, "Hey, let's partner up." And we called it classicgames.com, and we rolled the thing out. And I went knocking. I think at our concurrent player level, we had about 600 people at one time, which for 1997 was pretty darn good.
1997. I wish the coder was here because I'll tell you why. There was lots of options when we were making this game server, the chess one in 1992, and I'm just curious which decisions he made as opposed to the decisions I made.
In terms of what he coded it in or in
Well,
terms of
no,
logic?
in terms of how you do you just iterate through all the users who are online to see what if they had typed a command, and then you just keep doing that over and over again, and then if someone had typed a command, you execute the command, then you go on to the next person? Or do you do things somewhat in parallel? Or, there were a lot
You're
of
thinking about the
decisions.
logic
Yeah,
in
because there's a
terms of
lot of
that.
decisions in terms of, like, if you had tens of thousands of people, for instance, depending on what choices you made in the beginning, it could become too slow, and then it's not good if
Mhm.
there's a clock.
Well, that would be so he had to scale it because Yahoo came knocking on our door in 97 and 98. We sold it to them, and he went with them and became their chief game Yahoo. So he was tasked with that scaling.
Yeah, well, with Yahoo's resources, there's lots of things you can do for making it parallel and to create multiple servers and to spin individual instances of a game onto another server. So with infinite resources, there's a lot more choices you have. But the reason I said I was jealous is because at one point I made a change in path, which is I went from being kind of more creative oriented with a little bit of software. So during this time, I was computer software guy, but I also worked at HBO. I was also trying to write fiction and nonfiction, and then I viewed the web as a creative medium, not as an entrepreneurial medium. So this is like in 1994. Not that many people knew how to make a website, and I kinda got drawn into helping people make websites, which is another story. But then I kinda switched from this more creative activity to just for this 12-year period being obsessed with making money. So did a complete switch. I went into the investment management business. I started a hedge fund. I started writing about finance. I was writing for the Journal, for the Financial Times. I wrote a bunch of finance books. I grew up pretty big hedge fund and then a fund of hedge funds. But I wish I had just stuck with my initial interests, which would have been software plus games. I mean, I had already made a game server and you guys did a great job, I thought, on Yahoo Games or, whatever I didn't know the predecessor of it, but it was very clean. I was always impressed with how clean Yahoo Games was, how easy it was to play, and how it seems like you set it up so it was easy to set up new games. And I thought that would have been a real natural outlet for me as opposed to getting obsessed with investing and just diving deep into that for, now still 20 years later.
Well, two things about that. One, Yahoo, like everything they touched, killed it.
I know,
Right.
does Yahoo Games not exist now?
Yahoo killed. So here's what they did. They
Mhm,
began licensing flash games.
mhm.
So its roots were these board and table games with multiplayer and built a huge community. I remember going on and sometimes seeing 150,000 or so people, playing at one time, which back then that was quite a few. I mean, it's not like Fortnite now, but had a hugely loyal following. But Yahoo, they killed everything. And they
Uh,
actually spiked it a few years ago. They just totally removed it. And the community was like, "What? Why? We love this."
I was on there every day. I remember you even had Chinese checkers. I was playing Chinese checkers on there. Every card game, that you had on there, I was playing. So
It could be, so this actually could lead to another interesting discussion. What if your dream was to circle back around and we actually revived a multiplayer game site?
well, but the thing is, I think a lot of games have really been the game servers are great. So, like, chess.com for chess, plus ICC, the one I helped start, those are great now. Those are I mean, the best players in the world play there. It's very sophisticated. The Go servers that are out there are play the best players in the world play on there. Backgammon, the best players in the world play on there.
They're all separate though,
They're
right?
all separate, yeah. So you could do a roll up of potentially buying each one of them, but a lot of these game servers now are very profitable, so it'd be more expensive than in 1992 where it would have cost nothing, and, or even 1997, it probably would have cost nothing, like, probably cost you nothing to get all that guy's game software merged with through your site. I'm
Pre
sure you put
Pretty
together a
much, it was
good
just a
deal with a
partnership,
a
yeah.
coder, and, I don't know of any site, though, with the card games. I mean, Facebook has got some stuff, built in, and there's, like, Words with Friends and things like that, and
Mhm.
then now there's a lot of apps, so you could do
Right.
you can do online gaming with a lot of apps.
It would need to be mobile for sure,
Yeah.
a community of players, but
Eh
I can't believe Yahoo killed it. Still to this day, it boggles my mind.
yeah, because stuff like that is obviously, it's very sticky because you're not going to the site and leaving, and people are gonna return every day because that's where your friends are. I
Mhm.
made friends on these things.
And then cut off from it, and that kinda just goes to show how these centralized services, right? It's one thing to be in a community and, oh, you're disconnected from your friends. It's another to build a business on it and get deplatformed, right?
Yeah.
And that's happening. Have you ever had an account closed or suspended on any of the social platforms?
No.
But you know people who have.
Yes, every day.
Yeah, and so, does
Well,
that
there's a big finance site or news site, Zero Hedge, that just got
Zero
either
Hedge?
banned or shadow banned.
Epic Times, I think, was another
Oh, I
one.
don't know.
Have you noticed, in terms of political leanings?
Yeah, yeah, I've seen some Facebook groups that are, like, shadow banned where they exist, but they won't show up on the feed unless you look for it.
I think I'm shadow banned on Twitter because I
You have
reach.
800,000 followers on Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't think you're shadow banned.
No, I get, like, if you look at the engagement with my tweets and the insights of how many people see them, it's the numbers are not what they used to be.
Well, was it a spike down or a gradual drift? Because I think in general, the algorithms are favoring newer users and are users who the algorithms change all the time, right? So, you look like at a platform like TikTok, I think their algorithm is very sophisticated where they give this huge dopamine rush to new users. Like they'll throw your videos out front if you're brand new to the platform so that you might have 10 followers but get 200,000 views on a video and that gets all the new users excited, but the longer you're on, your relationship with the algorithm changes and maybe that's happening
I'm old
on
and
Twitter.
gray. They don't care. I wrote the book on Twitter, literally. Twitter Power 2.0 and Twitter Power 3.0, among the top selling books on using Twitter for business.
Was
And
that soft porn fiction?
It was not.
So the predecessor to 50 Shades of Twitter?
And I couldn't even get anybody there to talk to me. I mean, Jack never wanted to have a conversation. And they're like, "We got
When
this."
did you write them?
It was 2009, 2010, 2014.
Well, you should have called me. Dick Costello wrote the foreword to my book, Choose Yourself.
So close. Who did I have write the forward for the first one? Tony Robbins wrote the forward for the first one.
So you kinda failed.
I went with the marketing
I'm
approach.
just
I
kidding.
did
That
because
no, that's a huge get for a forward. That's a bigger get than I got for Choose Yourself.
well, it would have been if his team would have announced it at all, but they
No, just
didn't.
the name provides a good credibility to what you're saying.
It didn't hurt. We sold books, but, just like Google when I wrote the AdSense code, and we hit New York Times with that one. It's the only time I've ever hit the New York
Yeah.
Times list. In fact, my publisher who did that likes to introduce me at conferences. He goes, "And here's my friend Joel Comm, who hasn't had a New York Times bestseller since 2006."
No, he's not supposed to say that. He's supposed to say New York Times bestselling author. Once you're a New York Times bestselling
Uh,
author, you're always a New York Times
he
bestselling author.
likes to rib me because it
Now,
hasn't happened again.
I would say books like the AdSense code will not ever make it onto the New York Times bestseller list ever again. I mean, there's a little curation that happens,
Mhm.
and I think all of that stuff now is kind of in I don't want to call it the trash heap, but just sort of the pile of constant books that are being produced now about, every change in SEO and
Mhm.
social media and so on. Like
Well, a
kind of
new
the
title has to have an F word in it, if you
Yeah,
know.
right. There is a lot of that now. Other than Mark Manson's book, there's that other one, um, Victor something. Anyway,
Victor, F yourself. Is that
yeah, something like that. And then we just had breakfast with one of my favorite F authors, Maddox. He wrote F Whales,
Mm.
and it was a hilarious book. But anyway,
The pendulum's gotta swing back at some point, right?
it's
And
already has, I think.
I mean, it's enough with it already.
Yeah.
I was somebody linked to one of Mark Manson's articles, and I went to his website, and it says author, speaker, entrepreneur. I'm like, it should just say "effer" on there too, because
Well, that was his big his most famous article was the article that the book is based on, and it was a really great article. That book has sold over 8,000,000 copies, and on Amazon right now, it is the most pages read book on Amazon. So Amazon could tell on the Kindle how many pages you've read. More pages have been read of that book than any other Kindle book.
brilliant marketing. I mean,
Yeah,
that title, that was it. The title did. It's like the 4-hour work week.
yeah.
Everybody wants that, and everybody wants to learn the art of not caring and being able to live their lives.
It goes to show you though how important title is because Tim Ferriss had a completely different idea for a title. It was sort of like the drug dealer's handbook for selling blah blah because he was selling like these neurotropic sort
Uh-huh.
of nutraceuticals and stuff. And so he had this really like elaborate title, and somehow or other his publisher said, "Nah, we're gonna go with the 4-hour work week." And then
What a coup.
for Choose Yourself, I was debating between 4 different titles. My favorite was Choose Yourself, and then I had some friends propose I had 3 other friends propose 3 other titles, and I put up Facebook ads for each title, and you're able I just put a $20 budget behind each Facebook ad, and we're able to see and it clicked to nothing. If you clicked on it, you would just get nothing, but you can see how many people clicked on it.
Mhm.
So I picked the title that the most people clicked on, and it was by far Choose Yourself.
You just basically crowdsourced
Yeah,
the title out
yeah,
there.
because that works. Focus grouping in a mass media. I knew that was my audience, kind of the social media audience who were people who were already following me, and so I figured that would be the best group to quote unquote ask. I didn't ask them directly because you don't really want people's opinions, but you do want people's clicks in those types of
That's
tests.
doubly smart, right? Because if I'm gonna crowdsource, I'll go to my friends and I'll ask them. But you're right, there's that inherent bias that's built in there. People vote, right, with their choices.
Yeah, and my friends were the people I asked were extremely smart. They were extremely like great writers and authors and title pickers. But everybody has their kind of good and bad ideas, and so the titles they picked just simply didn't work for this. And Choose Yourself turned out to be by far the best title.
I
And then the 2 of the people I asked were Tucker Max, who you probably know, and
Mhm.
Ryan Holiday, who are, great
Yes.
writers and also great title pickers. They just didn't, maybe because they didn't have the same feel for the book that I did, but they were both giving me a lot of advice, and we decided to do this experiment.
That's actually a interest for somebody's bio for like Ryan Holiday. You should put title picker as his bio line.
Yeah, that would be, he's got a lot of impressive things in his bio, so that's the last thing he needs.
His title.
Mhm.
Actually, I've changed mine because when you do a lot of different things over the years, people don't know who you are anymore, right? And
Yeah.
I've kind of
Yeah,
failed
who are you
myself.
anyway?
Yeah,
You did Yahoo Games.
I
Now I'm
failed
really
myself.
impressed.
Internet entrepreneur, so I built a site in '95. I did Yahoo Games. I had one of the first deal sites on the web in 1999, dealofday.com, with, making a lot from affiliate marketing. Um,
Did like My Points or somebody buy that,
no,
or
they didn't. I did sell it to an individual buyer in 2012 after making a lot off of it, and they killed it, which really makes me sad. So many times people buy sites, they get these, big eyes, and then they don't know what they're doing with it.
I think most people shouldn't acquire sites.
Right, because it
Or
came from
I
my
don't
passion.
most people shouldn't acquire businesses because, like, most business acquisitions kinda fail.
Mhm. It requires that initial passion and, it's your baby.
Yeah,
Who's gonna take care of your baby
yeah.
like you did?
Like, you're willing to work 23 out of 24 hours a day on it. No one else is going to do that.
Well, if you're impressed by Yahoo, I mean, you know what app I made, right?
No.
Oh, I made the iFart app.
I don't even think I know
It
that app.
it went to number 1
Really?
in 2008 and still gets downloads today. We basically set the trend for stupid novelty apps on the
I like
iPhone,
that.
and, it was explosive. Made a bit of a
Very
stink.
funny.
Yeah,
Yes.
you get all
Very
the
very
this is
punny.
part of my stand-up
Yeah.
routine right here, although I'm a better sit-down comic than I am a stand-up comic.
City
Sometimes
Dog's
I'm a
okay.
sit-down and shut up comic.
City Dog's okay, that's good. Well, went to number 1, so it was good enough.
Went to number 1, still gets talked about today. George Clooney, in the Rolling Stone, cover interview they did with him, said that it's his favorite app. He has it on his phone. So every time somebody in the media mentions it, it blows up again. And there's another not so subtle pun for you.
I only have rarely sorry, I've only recently started really using apps, like going in the App Store and
Mm.
saying, "What app should I buy?" Like, when I get a new phone, I get Google Chrome app, and I get Backgammon and the particular Backgammon app that I like, and that's it.
Well,
Those are my apps.
clearly, you need to get iFart. I mean, your life
I
will
know,
then
I know.
be
I feel
complete.
like less worthy now.
So, why Chrome when there's Brave?
Uh, so Brave, Chrome is just I've always kind of trusted Google products, whether I should or not, and I like how everything.
Spoiler alert, you should not.
I believe that, but I like, so I like just having kind of connected up all my different Google apps. It feels like one ecosystem that I can make use of. And I feel like there's more apps or more functionality when they're all kind of working together and you have all of
It's
them.
hard to get off of it, and I intend to de-Googlefy. I started by switching from using Google to DuckDuckGo.
Yeah.
DuckDuckGo is a privacy browser, the
So
net
our
tracking me.
son uses only DuckDuckGo, which by the way, they got
Nice.
Duck.com now. So, and Gabriel Weinberg's been on my podcast a bunch of times.
They got what?
They got
DuckDuck.com?
Duck.com.
Oh, that's great,
I
good to
think
know.
they Google gave it to them.
Well, that was nice of Sergey and
Yeah.
Larry. Here's a little something. Even though we own the world, here we'll throw you
Yeah.
a duck bone.
And they're a good solid, like, I think 1% of search traffic, which is not
Yeah,
insignificant.
it's not. And so, and it's very rare that I don't find what I'm looking for and have to go to Google. And then I removed Chrome from my laptop, my desktop, and my phone, and now I use Brave. And it's very, very rare that I come across something that doesn't work as it's intended to. So I've got this privacy browser, which, by the way, they announced yesterday, 12 million users now, and I get paid in basic attention token if I look at ads, which is their
Yeah.
cryptocurrency, BAT
So,
token.
Robin, does John use Brave, the browser? Should text him.
Yeah. So but the tricky part is the suite of products, right? Because you've got Gmail, you've got your Google Drive, you've got your Google Calendar. And I'm actually looking at alternatives now. There's one I ran across called Colab, KOLAB, collabnow.com. They'll love that free shout out, even though I'm not a customer yet. And allegedly, it's supposed to integrate those three and they could port over your entire Google account.
Well, that was another thing that some entrepreneur did that was just so easy in retrospect, and but somebody did it and sold it to Google, which is to basically make Microsoft Word on the web. And then obviously that's going to be useful and people will use it and make Excel on the web and so on. And Google just bought all of those little companies. They're whoever again, like I was programming, I was doing internet programming back in like 1988, programming on the web, as soon as Tim Berners-Lee, whatever it was, 1991 or 1992, released the first web server. And all of these things are not rocket science. There's no real rocket science on the web, which is part of the beauty of the web, at least in the beginning. And I wish I had just that's one of my bigger regrets. Is I wish I had just stuck with that because I had the passion, I had the interest, I had the skill, and I had the ideas even. But I was like, no, no, a more direct. I was more. I got out of balance where when you start focusing on money too much, where money is the goal, and money should never be the goal because then you'll just lose your creativity. You won't have the right kind of energy for it. You'll get disappointed over the wrong things to be disappointed in, and there's no real pleasure in y- doing things for the money because you can also lose money, and then it's very painful. Whereas if you're making like a game server or iFart, it's just fun, and then some things work, some things don't. Some things make it to number 1 in the iTunes store. I'm sure you did some things that were fun that didn't make it to number 1, but you keep
All the
trying.
rest of them,
Yeah,
right? But you never know what's gonna hit.
right, you never know.
That's, my last book was called The Fun Formula, and that's the whole notion behind it is that you just gotta do things that you're passionate about, that you're engaged in, and something is gonna hit.
Well, and the key word there is do. So many people I'm sure you get these emails as well. I get emails all the time, almost every day. 24 years old and I haven't yet found my passion in life. Like, what should I do? Or I'm 55 years old and I'm going through a life change right now. Lost my job, my spouse left me, I don't know what I'm passionate about. What should I do? Same question. But uh, the key is you have to do lots of things. You can't think your way to a passion. It's never worked for me that way. It's never worked for anyone I know that way. You have to like do things and like I bet you the first time you clicked around on Twitter and saw your friends there and you were communicating with people, you probably got excited, excited to the point where you became an expert and then wrote 3 books about it. So, I'm sure you didn't do that, "Oh, this thing's big, it's gonna make a lot of money, I'm gonna write the
Right.
Twitter code or
Never
whatever."
never intended to.
Right.
It's always you I like to play with the toys, as do you. I kinda see the world as this big sandboxes everywhere, and we're kids with pail and shovel, and we
Yeah.
go and we, like, build stuff, and sometimes, "Oh, that sand's not wet enough, nothing's gonna happen there," and then sometimes we build a little something, it's like, "Oh, that's interesting." The waves come wash it away, somebody else created something, like, I don't do that, but then every now and then you build something, it's like, "Wow, look what we built here," and what happens? People invariably come to you and say, "How did you do that?" And that's when you write the book.
Yeah, yeah, and the kid analogy is good because, look, that's why kids get broken bones all the time. "Oh, there's a tree, I'm gonna climb up it and see what it feels like," or there's, I wanna go on the roof," or "I wanna go wading into the ocean a little bit too far and see what happens." So, kids try things and do things, and that's how they figure out what they like doing. "Oh, I like bicycle riding, I like playing basketball," whatever it is.
What did you do when you were little? Now, before teenager, before the hormones kicked in, what was your jam?
Uh, I I don't know. I rode my bicycle a lot. I lived in a suburb, so it was
Mm.
great to just there were no cars. All my friends lived in a few block radius, and we'd just ride our
Did you
bicycles around.
create something? Was it, when you were in your room or in the basement or whatever? Did you make
Y-
things?
yes. So every year I was always passionate or like literally obsessed with something, and that obsession would last for 1 or 2 years, and they would be really sometimes really obscure, sometimes a little bit more mainstream, but I would get incredibly obsessed to the point of annoying my parents or costing my parents a lot of money, one
Like
or
like
one or the
what?
other. Name a year. Pick a grade.
Uh, 5th grade.
5th grade, that was actually a pretty safe year. I actually got really obsessed with writing in 5th grade,
Mm.
and so I was just reading constantly, and I was writing stories, but I was writing stories about all my friends, and I was trying to basically write stories of them, basically, I was picking every boy and girl in my classrooms and figuring out who was gonna end up dating or marrying who, and I would just write constantly in this big notebook about it, and everybody was always trying to get into my notebook to see who I was fixing up with who, and so I would carry it with me everywhere and, like, to the bathroom and everything, and then the one time there was just a big fight, like, 10 kids were trying to grab the notebook out of my hand, and the teacher banned it from the school for life, but,
You were a banned book.
yeah, it was a banned book. I was censored by my own 5th grade teacher, Mrs. Hilge, who recently died, rest in peace, and, uh, and I so consequently, as a result of that, though, I was constantly reading, like, every Judy Blume book and tons of
Are you there,
fiction, and
God? It's me, Margaret.
I have since then had Judy Blume on my podcast, which was
Oh,
a
isn't that
great pleasure.
fun?
Yeah,
Full circle.
yeah.
I've got one full circle that I really love. Zig Ziglar was my
Oh, yeah?
mentor, and I remember going
He
to
was on
his.
your podcast?
No,
Isn't he dead?
his son has been, yeah, Zig
Okay.
is gone now, but, it was back in 2000, well, I don't remember the year. I was 23 years old, and I went to a Born to Win conference. It was the only motivational, inspirational event I'd ever paid for. $500, back in 1989 for a young, DJ, because that's what I was doing. It was a lot of money. And Zig is the one that when I became a salesman, I bought all the tapes and drove in my truck and just would listen to Secrets of Closing the Sale and See You at the Top again and again and again. And it was in 2010, I spoke at Kerry Wilkerson's boss event in Dallas, and I got to share the stage with Zig and
Oh,
tell
that's
him what
fun.
he had meant to me, and he signed my little ka-ching button.
What's the main secret to closing the sale that you got out of that book? If you were
Uh,
gonna say one thing.
yeah, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Alright, people don't care how much that sounds like a Steve Cohen quote.
Yeah.
People don't care how much you know until you know how much
Until
until
they
they know
know
how
how
much you
much you care.
care.
That one, and you get what you want in life when you help enough other people get what they want.
Say that one again?
You get what you want in life when you help enough other people get what they want.
Okay.
Very
Uh,
servant-based attitude all
s
the way across.
I like that style of quote, do you know what that's called? I think it's called
You flipping the script, right?
I think it's called anaphora? I don't know how to
Who's
say
Anna? What's she for? I don't know.
it's like the, Ted Sorensen, speech he wrote for JFK, "Ask not what you can do for your
Right. I bet
ask
you could
not what
come up
your
with one right now if you wanted to.
well, you see, that man over there is the master, but oh, so
Oh, there you go. Say that again. When you doubt your power, you give power to your doubt. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, he's got them all over
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
Maybe I got the wrong guy at the
he's a
mic. I got
catalog.
Steve. Yeah.
We keep trying to get him to write a book, but he just doesn't do it.
Yeah. I
Uh,
think that you can put, what do they call them? Sphora? S for what?
An Anaphora?
Anaphora.
I think that's the name.
You could just do a whole book of those that, one on a
Yeah,
page with a little illustration.
yeah.
You could be the new Far Side. Just call it the close side, the near
Exactly.
side.
Yeah.
Gary Larson's back on the web.
Is he? I didn't
Yeah.
know he was off the web.
Well, I mean, you grew up on Far Side as well.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, you had to.
yeah.
All of us did, and now there's a website for Far Side,
Oh,
and
I'll check it out, I don't know.
he might be publishing new content. I mean, you being, you're a comedy guy now.
Yeah, it was different than those comics, although Scott Adams of Dilbert fame has been on the podcast a bunch of times.
He's great. That dude, like he speaks his mind out there on Twitter. He's got this huge following now.
Yeah.
They watch him drink coffee and talk
Right, he
about
has
the stories.
drinks, coffee with Scott Adams every morning on Periscope.
And every morning he's like dum da dum dum da dum dum dum. He starts with his little
That was kind of a good impression of him, actually.
ditty. Yeah, dum da dum da dum. Scott, yeah, Scott's been on Bad Crypto. I want to talk to him again for Joel Comm's show about some other things other than crypto. And I want to talk about crypto in a moment, but I want to talk about comedy.
All right.
When did you decide I'm going to get up to the mic and do this thing?
Well, back in 1996, I was working at HBO, and I was doing a lot of work for their comedy department, like particularly the websites for all the different comedy festivals that and shows that HBO would produce or sponsor. And every Monday there was a bar. I don't know if it even exists anymore, called the Luna Lounge on Ludlow Street in downtown, and all it was like an alt comedy night, and people like so the host usually was Mark Maron, and people like a young up and coming comedian like Amy Poehler or Louis C.K. or Janine Garofalo were always performing, or Todd Barry, or lots of people were always performing there who are now household names, and we would go every my friends from HBO and I would go every Monday night and watch. And I was always thinking, man, I'd love to do this, but I'm terrified. I can't do it. And I couldn't even go to a comedy show because I was afraid of being picked on by the comic. And
You don't sit up front. That's you hide in the shadows.
right, right. And it's like the only kind of entertainment venue where you'd be willing to pay to sit further back. Like you'll pay more to sit further
Don't
back.
talk to me. Don't see me.
Right. And, but then I started public speaking around 2004, and everyone always said to me, "Oh my god, this was so different than the normal talk I see. Are you a stand-up comedian?" Like, people would always ask me, "Are you a stand-up comedian? Are you a stand-up comedian?" And I'm like, "No, but one day I might try it." And then starting around 2014, I started adding more elements of actual stand-up comedy to my talks. And then around 2015, 2016, I started doing clubs. And then around 2016, I got really obsessed. That became my obsession. And I do up to, I don't know, I mean, this week I'll do over ten shows.
So now it's a thing.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, clearly not for the money because
Yeah, it's
comedians
definitely not for the money.
don't get
Do
paid.
not. Oh, I'm going to Cincinnati. I'm doing 6 shows, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, headlining or co-headlining the main club in Cincinnati. I'm getting $600, so it does
Wow,
make
pays
some money.
for your airline,
Yeah.
for your
Oh,
coach
no, it does
ticket.
not pay for my airline, my first class ticket to Cincinnati, and then, for my wife and kids as well. So, and then the week after, I'm going to, Amsterdam to do 5 shows at the International Stand-Up Comedy
So
Festival.
it's a thing now. It's actually a thing. I've got is there video of you doing your
No, no,
routine?
because I would put up videos every now and then, and I get really and this is kind of the topic of my next book. I get really super analytical when I'm learning something, and, uh, I I I really get intense about and I've done put a lot of thought into the so-called 10,000 hour rule, this idea that you have to work 10,000 hours at something to be good or great at it, and I just don't believe that. So for myself, I've worked on a bunch of hacks to this rule, this so-called rule, but it's actually not a rule. And I realize every time I put a video up that a month or 2 later, my whole style and act was completely 100% different. I was basically changing my act about 20% every week.
So you can never do a Netflix special.
Well, or I can because I'll have a new one ready, a few months later.
Yeah, but then it's gonna get dated and. See,
Well,
I would encourage you. I would like because there's a lot of people that would enjoy seeing your routine that don't get an opportunity to see you at the club.
it's true, but I would say only it's funny. So now it's like 5 or 6 years. It's only in the past 6 months that, I realized some things that were I had already kind of developed the basic skills. And by the way, when I say developed, that's not true because it's sort of nonstop. It's one of those areas where you never stop learning. You've never really even developed halfway the skills that you need because there's always the more it's one of those things where the more you learn you realize how infinitely more there is to learn, and it's not just one skill called comedy. It's humor, it's likability, it's stage presence, it's crowd work, it's dealing with hecklers, it's timing, it's inflection, it's impressions, it's improv. So there's all these kind of mutually exclusive skills that you have to get better at, and so you study different comedians to get better at each one, and you write every day to get better at the writing component. But in the past 6 months, I kind of realized, and this is out of 5 or 6 years, I realized I'm not gonna say a joke just because it's funny. And this is similar to the discussion about money. I'm only gonna talk about things I really care about and make them funny.
Mm.
So there's lots of jokes I could say that have a setup and a punchline, and I can make it funny. If you combine any two concepts that don't seem like they're related and find some tricky way to connect the dots, that's kind of the formula for comedy. But I'll only do it now about things I care about because then what happens is if there's silence or if people don't seem to like it, then I don't care about them. So I'm still speaking from the core and I could just keep going. It doesn't matter to me if they're not laughing, I could judge if I doing something wrong, but if I already know that these topics or jokes get most audiences to laugh, I don't have to care what the audience thinks because I can always fall back on my core beliefs that the comedy is stemming from.
Who's you have to pick one. Your desert island comedian could be living, could be dead. One person that would be your go-to.
Well, I'm gonna pick one, but I just want to say that there is a lot because
Right.
because everybody's good at different things, and I wanted to get good at many of these different sub skills. But I think an all around master of many of most of these skills is Dave Chappelle, obviously.
Mhm.
And by the way, I didn't. It took me a while to warm up to his style because he's a little more conversational,
Mhm.
and also just in terms of style, Louis C.K. Um, but I mean, every comedian's got a different set of sub skills that you wanna learn from. Like, if you name a comedian that I happen to follow, and there's also some newer comedians that are on the verge of shooting out the gate that are amazing, and there's different things to learn from them as well. So I have various go-tos depending on what I wanna learn that day.
I'm still Stephen Wright to me is
Stephen
just
Wright's great.
the master of the
It's a s it's
deadpan
a
one-liner.
it's a small world. I just wouldn't wanna paint it.
Right. It's great stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't hear me because I'm talking in parentheses.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
But
it's
the
brilliant.
thing is okay, so the thing about him is that's amazing writing, which is why he's the only co-writer Louis CK ever used for the TV show Louie,
Hmm.
and he also helped Louis CK with that other show, Horace and whatever, which Louis CK only released from his website. But it's hard for someone like Stephen Wright to do a special. It's hard to do an hour of those, and it's hard to listen to an hour of those. But by the way, he's the funniest person on the planet because that style of writing is incredible and it's very difficult. But it's again, it's hard to do an hour-long special.
Maybe that's why he's only done a couple
Yeah, it's
specials,
very
right?
the shorter the act is or the shorter the joke is, the harder it is to write.
So you mentioned Chappelle, and I can't help but think of the latest Netflix special,
Yeah,
right? What'd you think of that?
I thought it was great.
Yeah.
So it was Sticks and Stones, and in the prior 4 specials, he had been criticized after each one over something or other that he had said, and he was always kind of, like, apologizing or thinking about it or, "Why are they all criticizing me?" And finally, he was like, I'm sick of pandering to everybody," and he just wanted to do kind of the most charged special he could do, and it was amazing because what happened was, on Rotten Tomatoes, there was one point where the audience score where the critic score was 0,
Right.
and the audience score was 100. So, the critics kept saying would write I read all the articles because I wrote about this phenomenon. I wrote about what he was doing, and I broke down the entire special, but the critics kept saying, "Oh, it's not just that the jokes are polarizing,
They're
he's just"
mean.
yeah, or they would say, "He's just not funny anymore."
Mhm.
And I thought that was such a stupid thing for all the critics to say, given that the audience score at that moment was 100, and in the special itself, you could see the crowd constantly laughing.
Right.
So who are they to judge
Well,
what's
he's the
funny?
ones that he was talking about,
Yeah.
right? That was really an assault on the media establishment and the critics.
Well, he at one point in the beginning, he said, "I'm gonna do impressions. You guys like impressions?" Which by the way, that was ingenious. He got the audience to give him permission to what he
Mhm.
did next. So they all cheered, "Yeah, yeah, we love impressions." So he did some mindless impression, and then he did another one. He started speaking in this really buffoon voice, and he was like, "Oh, if you say anything even 15 years ago, you're not allowed to have a job. We're gonna get rid of you, blah, blah." And he was like, "Who am I imitating?" And everyone in the audience yelled out Trump, and he said, "No, MF, I'm you."
Yeah.
And and then
Uncomfortable laughter then, right? Because, oh, yeah, we are I mean, some people there are cancel culture minded,
yeah.
and, toxic as can be. I mean, why can't we just be ourselves? Sticks and stones may, you know I'm not gonna die from somebody's opinion.
Well, and you think about it, like, take something like horror movies, okay, or thrillers. These were always, in I had this conversation with someone else recently where, parents always wanted to expose their kids to potentially dangerous or horrible situations, but in a safe way throughout all of history so that they could learn not to do it. or the kid parents would take kids to even, and this is probably too horrible, but this is what they did for thousands of years. They take their kids to public executions. Like, see, don't do what this guy did.
Get your
Look
head
what
cut
happens.
off.
And then that switched to horror movies and thriller movies, which were, again, as far as the brain's concerned, it's probably the same thing. It's a way to safely expose a kid to something incredibly dangerous that they wouldn't want to participate. They wouldn't want to be an active participant in.
So is
And
the lesson from watching The Exorcist at 10 years old, don't get possessed, kids? I mean,
or maybe not be as scared of their, I don't know what the lesson is.
traumatized for life.
But now there's all these warnings, and there's warnings of the warnings, and you can't go to a college class. Kids can't go to college classrooms. They get warnings if oh, we're gonna discuss sensitive material today, kids. Like,
Safe spaces.
21-year-old kids are like, oh no, I got triggered by this. Like, what are you paying 60,000 a year to go to college for? Just so you could stay home because you're triggered? Like, now it's clearly like the death of the Roman Empire now. Like, there's everyone's like so concerned about climate change, which I respect, whatever. But at the same time, this society is already dead. Like, humans probably shouldn't really live another 100 years. And I don't say this in a depressing way.
I'm sure your kids will love that.
I've told them, I don't even say this in a depressing way. It just is what it is. Like, if you can't go to college anymore because you're triggered by something, then you're basically
You're
as good as
screwed
dead.
anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is college even, I mean, you went to university?
Yeah.
I went to university. I went to University of Illinois in Champaign, got my 4-year degree.
Oh, so Mark Andreessen, Netscape,
Yeah.
Mosaic was
Yeah,
made out of
born there.
the
Yep.
first graphic web, first visual web browser.
A lot was born at U of I, still is being born there, but all I remember is a blur, because those were the years of my life where I was just stoned.
Right. And so, and your parent, good thing it was
82 to 86.
82. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you,
$4,000 a year.
right. So it's a state school. So now the same school out of state, I'll bet you, if we look it up, is 67,000 a year tuition.
I don't doubt it. So let's talk about education. Who is it necessary for, and how are you going to treat it with your kids when they get of college age?
Well, I have 5 kids, some, 3 stepkids, 2 biological kids,
Mhm.
but my kids are age 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21
Okay,
right
so you're
now.
going through it already.
Been there, done it, and going through it.
Yeah.
And but just in general, your first question, other than for legal reasons, nobody needs a college education. Like, who needs one? Like, okay, yes, to get a medical degree, which allows you to practice medicine, you need to go to undergraduate, then you need to go to medical school.
Right.
You get $600,000 in debt or whatever, and then you start paying enormous amounts for, your insurance to have a practice.
But it's the cost of doing that profession, just like legal profession you have to go through
Right.
and
Which, by
pass
the
the
way,
bar.
that's ridiculous too, because I'm not saying lawyers don't do a job that requires a lot of study, but what you study for to pass the bar probably has nothing to do with what you actually practice. I don't know if you have or not, but I've given lectures at law firms about, let's say, new areas of law that the lawyers didn't necessarily know about. So, for instance, as the finance sector got more and more regulated in the OOs or Bitcoin, I've given lectures to law firms on many topics in the finance industry as they were getting comfortable with, either areas of expertise that their firm didn't currently practice, or to keep track of, changing regulations. So, it's not that they're, I don't know what the purpose of going to law school is other than to just squeeze another, several $100,000 out of these kids. But I don't know, to be a computer programmer, you certainly don't need a college education. I
Mhm.
mean, there are great computer programmers who are 12 years old, probably better than any 30-year-old. And to be a writer, you don't need a college education. You just need to experience life and to read a lot and to write a lot. Maybe you could say, oh, college teaches you a style of thinking, but you could learn that on your own. And plus you could go to college for free. You just won't get the degree. Many schools offer their courses online for free through these online MOOCs. And then there's places like Skillshare, Coursera, Khan Academy, LinkedIn Learning. They're teachable, highbrow, masterclass. There's so many online schools, but people, and they're great. I mean, they're great professors and teachers and courses, and they can be very active with the students in some cases. but it's not an accredited university. So kids are brainwashed into thinking, oh, this won't apply to me getting a job. But they're wrong because the job industry has completely 100% changed in the past 20 years where bosses or managers or companies care only about what skills you bring to the table, not what your degree is. It's very rare, I think, oh, you went to Harvard, I'm going to hire you, even though I have no idea about your skills. I think that only happens like if the boss went to Harvard and you went to Harvard, hey, go big H or whatever. I don't know what Harvard calls itself. And, only in those situations does it help. But I think in general, it doesn't even help get a job. The only thing that helps get a job are skills, creativity, all these things that you can develop 100% on your own. There are no skills that actually require you to go to college in order to learn that skill, other than for legal reasons, which you could learn medical stuff without going to college. You could learn the skill, but because it wouldn't be accredited, you won't be allowed to practice medicine.
Hmm. I went to Harvard.
You did go to Harvard?
Well, I visited and I got
Okay,
the
there you go.
shirt. I mean,
You went to University of Illinois.
I did.
Did you go
Yeah,
to grad
and
school?
I actually did speak at Harvard a few years ago, legitimately. So that's kind of fun to put on the resume. But no, I did not do grad school. I got a liberal arts degree in all things, irony of ironies, speech communications, because it seemed the easiest thing to do. But I had no desire to be a public speaker or even learn, the curriculum. I just picked something, and
Yeah,
you know,
because that was an easy set of courses,
well, I
right?
didn't have to go. I mean, I just, I was too hungover and stoned, and I didn't go to my courses, and that's what's so incredible about it is you can go to college and not learn anything except
That's
about life.
That's the best thing about college is that you don't really have to go. Meaning, like, I didn't go to my classes either. At my school, they kinda only had a midterm and a final, and so I just would blow off the rest of the time and do what I was passionate about, whatever it was those years. So, the latter half of my college career is computer, programming. So I would just write software and not go to the classes.
Real life education.
Yeah.
I think, so my kids both tried, they're in their 20s now, but they both tried college. Wasn't for them at the time, but I think if I was to go back, I would say, "You know what? Do 2 years community college and make it through that, get the basics because of the same thing you're gonna get at the $60,000 a year university, and then decide if you want to approach a profession that would require an undergraduate degree."
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea. Although I would still say they don't even really have to do that. Like, better to just go out and experience things, and then you'll know what you want to do. Like in a classroom, you're going to get good at classroom skills, and in the real world, you're going to get good at real world skills. So, my oldest, he goes to school at a college in England. So obviously the tuition is much cheaper, and it's a 3-year degree in England,
Hmm,
and he's majoring in computer science, which is probably the only degree where you're gonna make it for the little tuition he's paying, it'll be worth it for the degree, and it was structured, time for him to just focus on computer software, so that might not have been a bad decision for him. Second oldest was studying acting, and I'm like, "Why are you going to college?" So I never said yes or no because they knew my stance on this anyway, and I just wanted to constantly show them examples, like positive reinforcement about what it means to not go to college. They don't know that it's a viable choice when they're 18 because their guidance counselors are brainwashing them into thinking, "You have to go to college or you won't get a job." Why are you listening to a high school guidance counselor? A, do you want her job or his job? And B, they have an agenda. They wanna be able to say for their own funding purposes or whatever, "Oh, such a certain percentage of our school went to these kinds of colleges." So they have a total biased agenda. They don't care about your kids. So, in any case, finally, after going 2 years, my daughter dropped out and is now here in New York City pursuing the acting lifestyle. We'll see how it goes. And then 2 youngest are in application phase right now, although I'm heavily encouraging gap years.
mhm. Go see the world, go do something, and then come back to it if it's still your jam.
Yeah, which it's not going to be. No one's going to gap year and going back to college after that these days. Like, why would you have an amazing real world experience where you might even make real money and then suddenly you're gonna get trapped by debt or, huge payments?
I didn't realize this when Travis and I first interviewed you for the show, but once upon a time, at least if the wiki is true, you poo-pooed Bitcoin.
Yeah, in, I wanna say March 2013. Somebody asked, I used to do these Twitter Q&As every Thursday. I did it for 6 years from 2010 to 2016, like clockwork every Thursday at 3:30. I only skipped Thanksgivings every year, and I just did it 51 weeks out of the year. And during one of these Q&As in 2013, early 2013, somebody asked me what I thought of Bitcoin, and I said, "I think it's a scam," which I did think. And then, one of my friends saw that, Naval Ravikant, who later became or is currently very active in the Bitcoin space, and he was visiting New York, and we spent like 3 or 4 hours together or more, maybe 5 hours together, and he just broke down everything for me from, like, a programmer's perspective, then from an economic perspective, like, everything about Bitcoin. This was, like, in maybe, like, just a few weeks later, and I'm like, "Okay, I get it." And then just a month later, I built a store to sell. I was releasing on June 1st of my book Choose Yourself, and I was self-publishing it on Amazon. So what I did was, as a marketing thing, I created my own store, which accepted Bitcoin. And by the way, I reached out to a lot of people to help me. Nobody even knew how to do it. Like, I reached out to Coinbase, they stopped returning my calls. And I even complained to their VC, like, shouldn't if Coinbase is going to be active in the Bitcoin space, shouldn't they encourage people to use Bitcoin for transactions? They were like useless for me. So anyway, I created this Bitcoin store that accepted Bitcoin, and I had one product in the store, which was my book. And so if you wanted my book a month earlier than the official release date, you had to pay it in Bitcoin. Bitcoin was $61 a Bitcoin at the time. You had to pay 1/10 of a Bitcoin. So I got a bunch of Bitcoins from this, and and everybody had to leave their email address to buy, so I could mail them the PDF of the book, and it was almost all Amazon employees.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's funny. So you got Bitcoin really
So
early
yeah,
then.
yes, I thought it was a scam, but so what? Everybody then I was convinced and spoken to by someone who I really admired and who was incredibly smart and is incredibly smart, and I changed my mind.
Yeah.
So,
You mean you could do that
yeah,
in
like people act
2020?
like, "Oh, he thought this in 2013 and then he just changed his mind to make some money." No, I created a store, and I very publicly announced it. I was on CNBC talking about Bitcoin, and, I was probably more active in the Bitcoin space than just about anybody. Nobody had a bookstore in Bitcoin.
Mhm. That's really early. I mean, when
Yeah.
you think about it, and I remember, and usually I'm early to the game. I like to pioneer and play with the cool toys when they come out. When I heard about Bitcoin, I didn't get it because I didn't understand this whole mining idea. I mean, what are there little people on my processor? Ding, 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 and Bitcoins are shooting out. And because I didn't understand what that meant, I just kind of like, it wasn't until 2017 that I finally went, oh, that's brilliant. Why didn't I get that before?
Well, I think if you start with the problems of money, you very quickly you very quickly start to think of what the solutions could be, and then it turns out Bitcoin and its spin-offs solve a lot of the problems of money. Just like paper money solved a lot of the problems of metal money. Like, let's say, I don't know, you wanted to buy a house. You wouldn't bring a truckload of gold bars to the closing. There's some problems with money. And so paper money became these kind of certificates representing um, the value of the metal that you could buy with this paper. If you go to the US government, Fort Knox, and show, $100 bill in 1900 backed by gold, you wouldn't get the gold, but potentially the US government was backing it with gold that they owned. So that had a problem though, because what if your country was very innovative and successful, but simply didn't have the natural resources of having gold deposits under the ground in their country? So it seemed kind of silly to, you know, top out your innovation just based on how much metal you had under the ground. So we moved to a more fiat or basically trust-based system. If you trusted the innovation and creativity of your government, then you would trust the money. And it was backed by the goodwill of your government. There's enormous, enormous problems with that. Many problems. We don't have to get into them, but
Well,
it's
what if you don't trust the government?
y
That's the
well,
bottom.
first off, it's centralized. There's fees, there's every time you make a wire, there's fees all throughout the banking system that are baked into the entire system. There's a lack of privacy. there's so many problems. But there's like maybe 7 or 8 like really big problems that people wanted to legitimately solve, particularly after, you think about the financial crisis of 2008. I don't think people realize, particularly now, it's kind of almost forgotten. I don't think people realize the US had the world really had run out of money. Like there was no money to pay people if everybody wanted their money. So the system broke, and a very large band-aid was put on top of it, and you don't know whether it was luck or skill or thank God or whatever, but that band-aid worked. Who knows if it'll work a second time?
Right, because it's no different today, right? We still don't have the money, although we're just printing billions of dollars.
Right. I mean, they did solve a lot of problems coming out of that. Some of them were structural, some of them were very just brute force, like give all the banks like $1 trillion.
Mhm.
But some of them were structural, just how banks should value things. It's not, it's getting into the weeds, but it was clearly there was a big hole in a fiat money system, and Bitcoin solves that. And we'll see, because whenever there's any new financial instruments ever in history, kind of it go Wall Street and speculators will go crazy for a little while, and then you have scammers and con artists go crazy as well. And I think have seen the first wave of that. So in September 2017, this is another part people don't remember me saying. I was everywhere writing and saying, I went on CNBC and said it. I said 98% of these altcoins that you're seeing now and these ICOs are total scams being run by criminals or incompetents. So, and it's hard to tell which is which, but uh, 98% of these coins are going to go to zero. At this point in time, probably about 85% of those original ones are gone now. They're zeroed
Worthless.
out. And the main ones, which I always recommended, the kind of the main players, either Bitcoin or Ethereum or the other coins that provide a very important role in the ecosystem as opposed to just kind of some small functionality. Those have survived, and all of the little play things, the ICOs and all that kind of stuff have all, most of them have gone to zero. There's still a few more I think that'll go to a zero. There's some big ones I think that'll still go to zero.
You wanna say what they are?
Well, this is the sort of category where I get death threats occasionally. So, but I don't think, maybe it'll somehow become legit over time, like which occasionally happens. But I think Ripple is probably a scheme, but I have no real evidence of that. Just studying it, just studying how the code works. I think Ripple's probably a scheme.
Is it the code or is it because it's highly centralized?
Both. I mean, you could one the functionality is implied by the code, and in the code you could see if who has control over printing up new coins.
Mhm.
If it's not, if it's centralized, who has the control of printing money? That's the whole idea of Bitcoin, is that nobody has direct control over it, and so unless there's what's called a 51% attack. But I I'm not saying, I said it was a scheme and not a scam, meaning who knows? I don't know what the outcome is, but I just simply wouldn't own it. Even if it
Here's
goes up, I don't think of these things as investments. I think of these as the future the future currencies of the planet. So, if you're thinking of putting some percent of your portfolio in what could quite possibly be the default currency of the planet, I wouldn't use Ripple for that.
just a timestamp this. It is, February 19th, and right now on, CoinGecko, Ripple XRP, the coin that supports the function of Ripple, is 30 cents, has a market cap of $13 billion.
Yeah. So that kind of suggests it's not a fad, right? There's a lot of money, a lot of in order to get up to 13 billion, it's not like mom and pop is buying up all the Ripple. It's some big money in there. Although we don't know how much of that is owned by the initial founders and so on, who could print up more money, and they say they can. It's very confusing, Ripple.
Mhm.
Bitcoin is not confusing. Ethereum is not confusing. There's thousands and thousands of people who have looked at the code and studied it and tried to figure out any potential scams that can happen. And so it's pretty rock solid, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and some of other coins in those ecosystems. Whereas Ripple is not as thoroughly studied. There's some, because it is centralized, and there's some aspects of it that I don't know why do they need to do that if they're trying to solve the problems of, a lot of these people, I'm not saying Ripple did this again. I'm just saying a lot of these ICOs just raised money um, for their coins that were never implemented and put the money in their pocket and disappeared.
Hmm.
So, and that was obvious that was going to happen.
What about the primary Bitcoin forks, Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV?
I don't care for them. I don't say that they're bad, but Bitcoin is still legit, and the framework underneath Bitcoin, it gets better and better. The speeds, we're gonna have this halving moment pretty
Just a couple
soon.
months.
Yeah,
May 8th.
and that's gonna change a lot of things in the Bitcoin ecosystem. So I don't know. I don't feel like any of those they have uses, or they had uses at fork time, but I think now they're just speculative.
Do you think we'll get to a point where we are using Bitcoin as a currency? Because it's so speculative. And, if people are saying, hey, it's going to go to 100,000 or 500,000, why would you want to be like Laszlo and spend 10,000 Bitcoin on a couple pizzas when
Yeah.
those pizzas end up worth multi millions?
Yeah, I don't know. To be honest, I don't know if Bitcoin will really be used for transactions anytime soon. But look, gold's not used for transactions, and yet billions of dollars worth of gold is traded every day.
Mhm.
So, uh, and gold actually has no real functionality, whereas Bitcoin actually has functionality. Like the blockchain, and I don't want to. Blockchain's the most boring topic in the world, but it actually has functionality, and so hence Bitcoin has functionality, so it could be used for those purposes as well. Not just one function of Bitcoin is as a currency, another is for its kind of extra legal functionality with its Lightning network on top of it, and then as a store of value, it's being used. So when coronavirus, okay, when Iran, oh, we're gonna have war with Iran, Bitcoin spiked because everybody, believe it or not, everyone in Iran who had money was like, I gotta get my dinars the hell out of here. I'm gonna put it in Bitcoin because I can't transport gold around so easily. So Bitcoin shot up. And then right on top of that was coronavirus, and Bitcoin shot up again. Like, oh no, what if China is completely quarantined, and that means nobody in the US is gonna get their made in China products, which, by the way, is almost every single product in America, and then the American financial system has a similar 2008 style collapse. So you saw a lot of smart money, tens of billions of dollars rotate into Bitcoin. Bitcoin shot up like 30%,
Mhm.
since or more since coronavirus erupted 2 months ago.
I'm wondering what your thoughts are on Corona. Is this been manufactured by the Chinese government? Is this something that came out of a lab and it's released now to quell the protests, or is it just a natural phenomenon?
Well, I did a podcast on this. I called up uh, someone who is one of the top immunologists in the EU for coronavirus diseases, so SARS, MERS, and now this, you know, 2019 novel
COVID.
coronavirus.
Yeah.
Yeah, now it's called COVID-19. Uh, so I was very anxious about this, and the answer is that, and I'm not an expert, so I'm just repeating what this guy said, as opposed to what the nonstop barrage of quote unquote pseudo experts on Twitter and Facebook say. So I'm just, everything I say now is just quoting what an expert said, is that we just don't know. We don't know a lot of things. We don't know. For instance, a simple thing is, everyone throws around, oh, there's a 2% fatality rate. We have no idea what the fatality rate is. We literally have 0 clue. We don't know whether it's 2%, 4%, or 0.1%, or 0.001%. We just don't know, because the first week of coronavirus, there's no symptoms, and you can be cured during that week. Just like coronavirus, 20% of the common cold is a coronavirus of some sort. This is just a particularly lethal one. So, but many common colds are cured before you even know you have a cold. Same thing with this coronavirus. So in the first week, you could have symptoms, you could be infected, and it could go away, and you just never knew, because there's no test either, or at least there wasn't a week or two ago.
We could be walking Wuhan right now.
We could be Wuhan, we could be whatever. And the second week, you just have a mild cough. And so you still might get cured before you think, oh, I just have a cold, it's not the coronavirus. The third week, you die. If you haven't been cured yet, and if it's particularly lethal. And then after the third week, if you survive, you're good. You don't die in the fourth week. But So for all we know, they say now, oh, 70,000 people have been infected. It might be the case that millions have been infected. We just have no idea. And we also don't know if containment or quarantining works. Now, China said in the past 2 days that the number of infections has gone down, suggesting that containment works. But we really don't know. We don't know if they're what numbers they're inflating or deflating or whatever. And we really don't know many things. But we do know that the worries about this virus are similar to the numbers even are similar to H1N1 in 2010. It's the same kind of incidences of infection and incidences of fatalities at this point in the timeline, and then it turned out to be a big nothing.
I feel like I've seen this movie before.
Yeah, but to be honest, as opposed to all the other prior instances of these things, SARS, MERS, avian flu,
Mad
swine flu,
cow.
all that, I actually am worried about this one, not for the disease itself. So it could be the case that everybody in the world will get exposed to coronavirus at some point. That'll probably be the case. And my guess is the fatality rate is extremely low. But what I'm really worried about is the fear. So China, they had completely blocked off, like every factory closed down, and I would see just my friends. Everybody kind of postponed all their orders till February 9th when the Chinese New Year was supposed to be over. But now we're gonna get into March and maybe 3, 4, 5 months after that. Nobody's getting anything from Chinese factories. So who's gonna go out of business? If the fear doesn't stop, then you could have a mass financial crisis in the US because you can't just switch from Chinese factories to Indian factories or Malaysian factories like overnight. It takes a year or 6 months of
Mhm.
planning. And by that time, most, you know, businesses that rely on China will be out of business. And then it's just disaster.
That's got to be good for Bitcoin, though, right?
It's good for Bitcoin, but it's bad for the world.
Hmm.
So that's the only way 7 billion people get affected by coronavirus. Otherwise, maybe a million people will be affected. And that's horrible too. But that's who gets affected by other diseases every year. But 7 billion people get affected if the US economy drops by 10%. And there's mass panic and unemployment and fear,
Hmm.
and nobody can get, all antibiotics or most antibiotics are made in China. Most of the fashion industry, most of uh, electronics, everything's made in China. And
Not the,
and
not
and
this shirt. This is made in
Made in
America.
America?
Yeah.
Well, and the problem is what you realize is that no industry had a plan B. So no matter what now, structurally big things will happen, which is every industry will develop a plan B eventually. And it's they had I was surprised how few industries had an alternative source of manufacturing if in case this happened. Essentially zero of them had a plan B.
You know who got hit? Who's getting hit the worst though? Corona beer, right? I mean, how horrible would it be to be the Corona family and
Is that
have
actually
this?
true? Or
Well, no, I would imagine. I mean, I don't know if they're selling more beer or not, but I know that if you're kind of clueless about all this, would you and you saw beer on the shelf,
maybe,
are
yeah, I don't know,
are
or
you more
maybe it's
likely?
all good news is good news.
There's got or there's this subtle thing
Yeah,
like, oh, Corona.
yeah, I'll take
Mm.
Corona. I've heard that somewhere before.
Just needs a lime in there,
Yeah,
and that cures the whole thing.
yeah. So I'm nervous about it, not as a disease, but as an economic disease.
Well, you're self-sustained here. You got your place, which, by the way, beautiful place.
Nobody is self-sustained in a economic collapse.
That's true. You gotta get your food somehow, right?
Yeah, you
And
gotta get everything. You gotta get I've had very smart hedge fund managers and other people tell me, go to your CVS, go to your local pharmacy and stock up on cough medicine because it's all made in China and there's gonna be a shortage.
hmm,
So if you're used to taking Tylenol, by the way, also Tylenol is good if you have symptoms for the coronavirus and you're worried you have it. This immunologist suggested there's no cure, so you might as well take Tylenol. It's the best you could do
can't
to
hurt.
yeah, maybe there'll be a cure in a few months. They're fast tracking all these cures, but uh, particularly if there's going to be a shortage of Tylenol, you might as well stock up on it. And a shortage of anything you can get in the pharmacy, it's pretty much all made in China.
Hmm,
Most of your food is made in China.
interesting. We're that I'm not sure what to think about that. Go on.
Yeah, like Tyson Foods. If
Yeah.
you open up, if you get chicken at the frozen section of the grocery store, chances are that was made in China. Chances are the chickens were cooked or were farmed here, sent to China, and then packaged up and sent back here.
Really?
Yeah.
So, I mean, what are our American farmers manufacturing?
Well, they'll farm stuff, but they send it to China to package it up.
They really?
Yeah.
So it goes on the freighters, goes around the world,
Yep. It
and then it
comes
comes
back.
back.
Mhm.
We don't have the
We don't have
manufacturing.
manufacturing,
Huh.
which is fine. Like everyone's like, "Oh, bring back our manufacturing jobs." Oh, who wants to kill a chicken and take it, depuluck it, and uh, uh, clean it out and put it into stuff it into a box and send it back to the US? Sounds like a horrible
I
job.
just wanna eat it. It's
Yeah,
delicious. Mm.
like keep the manufacturing jobs, China.
Let's end on a
By the
political
way,
note.
by the way, Wuhan is like on lockdown. You get arrested if you leave your house now in
They're
Wuhan.
actually locking them in. I've
Yeah.
seen videos on Twitter, and there's one woman who's been super courageous. She is selling that the government is not telling you what's really happening, and they're lying to the people, and I'm basically risking her life. It went super viral, millions of views.
Yeah, well, I don't know who to believe. So, but the only thing is, if containment is not working, they should open up all the factories and just expose the world. Hopefully, there's some herd immunity
Mhm.
and open the factories again. Because otherwise, the alternative is some small percentage of people will die, and but the entire world will have other issues that are just as bad.
Mhm. Or
Like, people
some
will die of
mutated
other
form,
things.
right? If it's not, if we don't get exposed, some future mutated form of it could be more deadly.
But that's what's gonna happen anyway, but it tends to just happen all these things tend to start in China. So, again, I think people are gonna be more active about having a plan B for their manufacturing, but that's gonna change the economic balance of the world over the next few years. Second, there's gonna be a lot of more research on coronaviruses, so that'll be a healthy thing. 3, maybe people should stop putting bats at the top of the food pyramid in certain countries. I don't
Bat
know.
soup. Mmm, tasty stuff.
Yeah, like, I don't know when that became a delicacy, but that's
They
probably
eat
a bad idea.
everything. They eat everything. I mean, I've not been, but my mom goes to China quite a bit and
And
shoots
she's a
videos.
racist.
She she's not. She does shoot videos though for her YouTube channel, which amazingly has had like 30 million views now. Travelswithsheila.com. Little
Really?
little shout out to my mom there.
30 million views is a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot, but she doesn't make anything, which is, really the
She
crime
got a
behind.
sponsor or something.
I
Come
You
on,
know
you're
what?
an entrepreneur, figure it
She's
out.
almost 80 years old, she doesn't care. She just loves it's a hobby. Gives her
Cool.
something to do when she's home for those 6 months of the year. But she's shot videos of all the things that they eat over there, and I'm like, "Okay, I wouldn't eat any of that."
Yeah.
Just give me my noodles and chicken and some veggies, and I'm good, but the moment you start mixing in some, crickets and cockroaches and other weird things,
Well, crickets and cockroaches have, like, 50 times more protein than
I'm sure they
a
do.
steak,
I don't
the equivalent
care.
amount of steak.
I don't care. I was raised to eat
There are
meat.
there are insectarians now.
Yeah,
You could
crunch,
drop a
crunch.
cockroach from 100 feet high, and it'll still live.
Okay, that does not make me want to ingest one.
But just think if you could be dropped from 100 times your height high and still live.
It'd be pretty
You would
amazing.
get those powers if you eat a radioactive cockroach. I think we're on to some new superheroes here. It's X-Men 2.
Speaking of superheroes, let's close with politics. I wanna know your thoughts on Trump.
Uh, you know, in here's what I will always get to is oh, no, I don't wanna be pretentious. I was
Don't
gonna
be
quote something.
pretentious, just
No,
say, what do you think?
no, well, uh, you wanna have a good person as your leader, I think, in general.
Mhm.
You wanna have a good moral person who, not to say he's not strategic, not to say he or she is not gonna, you don't want someone who's gonna bend over backwards for other countries, but you want someone who, at a base level has, some moral fiber. We don't really know whether we don't know anything about Trump really.
Mhm.
We don't, like, after the Iran thing happened, I had a podcast with someone who was kind of pro-Trump, but he's very much anti-Iran, and so I wanted to find out what, again, because whenever a big event happens, all the spectators start arguing. Suddenly all my Facebook friends that I went to high school with are like the world's experts on Iran for the next 3 days while it's still the news cycle. They're like, you know, I didn't even know who Soleimani. I have never even heard his name
Right.
before we killed him.
It's good he's dead. It's bad he's dead. What? You don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. So all these people are arguing and they're saying, "Oh, this was a huge mistake. Why did you kill this guy?" What was he doing in the Baghdad airport right after bombing our air bases and killing U.S. citizens, U.S. civilians? So, and how many other like warlike things has he done? So anyway, I don't say anybody should be killed or not killed, but clearly there was a strategic reason, regardless of who is president or not. But anyway, I had this podcast with this guy who was an actual expert on this stuff, and he said an interesting thing to me. He said, one thing we know is the Iranian leaders are not crazy, and Trump might be. And so the Iranian leaders don't want to be nuked. They like where they are. They don't want to be forced out of power or worse. And so they will do the right thing now to lessen tension because they have no idea if Trump is crazy or not. So I don't know if this is a good strategy or a bad strategy. Seems like a good strategy actually to not know to have the rest of the world not know if you're batshit crazy. Speaking
Keep
of Wuhan,
guessing.
yeah, and so he actually predicted on my hot podcast what they would do, which is they'll do some sort of, you know, something that seems like a response, but no one will get hurt, which is what happened,
Mhm.
or no one got killed. People got hurt, but no one got killed. And then they'll suddenly want to come to the table, which is also what happened. And Trump's basically, I don't even know what's going on. It's not in the news anymore. It's like went out of the news like right away because it seems his tactic seems to have worked, which is the frustrating thing. So regardless of how I feel about Trump or Bloomberg or Andrew Yang, for a while I really liked Andrew Yang. Um, Regardless of how I feel about these people, you can't just have an entire menu of issues that you believe in and then just hand them out in the street. You've got to believe in every single one of these issues, or else you're an alt-right fascist.
Mhm.
Like like I'm kind of left of center, but now for the it seems like for the base of the Democrats, I would be like a fascist by being slightly left of center, which is really annoying.
They push really hard
Yeah,
towards socialism.
well, not even socialism. You can't even be the normal liberal issues unless you're an extreme now. You're a Trump fascist. And because I'm slightly left of center on the right, they'll say I'm a libtard. And so I basically can't say anything without both sides, which is the bad thing about polarization is that you can't have a dialogue or else both sides hate you. And so I think some of Trump's issues are great. Yes, of course, we shouldn't have countries imposing tariffs on us that we're not imposing on them. There should be fair trade. That's the point of fair. And yes, some countries where we've been providing, enormous support and aid, but they happen to be wealthy countries, they should pay for it. So some of these issues kind of make common sense. Other issues, like I'm not right. Like most, you know, Democrats, I'm not right on quote unquote right. I'm not conservative on a lot of social issues, which Trump seems to be. So there's some worries about the Supreme Court if he's reelected and we have two 80-year-old justices. Uh, uh, so it's complicated, forgetting about the person because I think, morally,
There's a cult of personality there.
and yeah, and there's many presidents have moral issues. Trump seems to have more than most, but also I just don't like the fact that you can't that because Trump bombed this guy Soleimani, you're not allowed to say this might be an interesting strategic decision for all Americans, or because he's having a trade battle, which by the way he's won in just about every country. Like we've
Mhm.
quietly, it's barely been, I don't even know if it's been in the newspaper. We renegotiated the entire NAFTA deal and our trade deals with Canada and a lot of other countries. No hassles, no issues, was not in the newspaper. Both houses of Congress voted for it, and boom, it was done. A lot of things have actually gotten done. China looks like, particularly with coronavirus, China's going to start to really be friendly now on tariffs to help their economy. So, and look, this Iran thing seems to have worked out so far. ISIS, when was the last beheading that you've seen in the
Not.
newspaper?
They seem to be pretty much gone.
Yeah, so I'm not saying this is like a go Trump, MAGA, blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying some of these things he's done probably were overdue and needed to be done.
Mhm.
Other things, I don't know, like, particularly on kind of the social side, I don't really agree. And then I don't know, are you up on every single issue? Like, I don't really know every single issue he's done. I don't follow every law or executive. I don't even read the newspaper. All I know is the things that are in the
It's on Twitter.
coronavirus, Iran. Yeah, yeah. If it's trending on Twitter, I'll see, well, why is Iran trending? Oh, we might have World War III. Let's
Yeah.
find out more about this before I, a non-expert, make a decision
Right.
if I should be scared or not.
So, is there anybody that can beat him from the roster of Democrats, or do you think he's a shoe-in?
So I've talked to a lot of people who are experts. So I've talked to for instance, Scott Adams, who very accurately predicted Trump in 2016. I've spoken to another guy on my podcast, this guy Phil Stutz, who helped run Trump's online campaign. I've also spoken to a lot of high up people in Democrat campaigns, and I think the common consensus is, there's no common sense here. You can't rely on prior elections. Everybody says people tend to vote their wallet. So if the economy is good, and the economy is very good right now, at least on the surface, it seems the economy is very good. If people vote their wallet, it seems like that would suggest Trump. But you never know. It's Trump. The rules have changed, so you don't really know if Bloomberg gets nominated. And, so one person I spoke to, a very intelligent guy who has run for political office and follows all of these things, he suggested that potentially a Bloomberg Klobuchar ticket could win, which surprised me because I don't like Amy Klobuchar. I don't know anything about her. I just don't like the way she's campaigning. I think campaigning just on a beat Trump slogan is sort of, why do you have to bring up his name every other? Why can't you campaign on your beliefs? Why are you just campaigning on I could beat Trump? Okay, well, what are you going to do when you rule the world? I want to know. That is a little bit more important to me. But anyway, this guy said a Bloomberg Klobuchar ticket could beat Trump because it all boils down to 8 states and 300,000 votes, essentially, to turn any election. And Bloomberg will carry Florida and, of course, New York and California. And Klobuchar could carry these sort of northern working class states that Trump surprisingly won in 2016. And so he felt that ticket could potentially beat Trump. But, who knows? If the economy's doing great and, uh, you know, I don't know. I think Trump's people probably will vote their wallet.
Bloomberg's not even officially in the campaign yet, right? Because there's not been a ballot that he's been on until.
Well, he doesn't have a vote yet. He is officially in the campaign, but he
there's
hasn't.
no, yeah.
But that's funny too. Like, why are all the newspapers declaring him already the winner? Like, he's
Not
not,
been
and they're wondering about who his VP nominee is going to be. This just shows, like,
because Bernie scares them.
right. Well, exactly. So this is what bothers me. Like, maybe Bloomberg is a legit candidate, but in the political process that's running, he doesn't yet have a single vote. And Bernie Sanders actually is winning the vote. So why did they automatically assume Sanders is out of the race? The guy's winning. So, you know, again, I am a little more scared of I'm just as scared of Sanders as Trump, actually. But uh, again, some issues might be good, some issues might be bad. I don't like the rhetoric that on the ultra Democrat side. I don't like the rhetoric against, if you built a big company, you should be penalized for it. So I think that is very dangerous rhetoric in a country that has for 250 years depended on its innovations and its belief in a frontier, whether geographic or conceptual. And so I think if you start overly penalizing innovation and the people who innovate, you're going to run into big problems. And I think that's kind of been the rhetoric of Sanders. And I get worried with Bloomberg that he's trying to pander to that a little bit as well, to just get those votes. But once you pander to it, you kind of have to live by it. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't really want anybody.
Crystal ball's broken.
I did like Andrew Yang for a while because I thought, oh, I read both his books. I watched all his interviews. This guy seems like a smart guy. He seems like we could have gone to
Seems like
school
a
with
nice
him.
guy.
Yeah. And he seems like his IQ's through the roof. But I as a tech guy with a tech background, I didn't like the fear. I believe in the UBI actually, and I believe in that Yang has thought out how to pay for it, and I think it's very smart. But I don't like the fear mongering of tech is gonna be the reason why we need a UBI. Like
Mhm.
that is just BS. I don't know if he's intentionally fear mongering or he just doesn't really know tech that well. I have no idea, but he seems like a smart guy. It's funny to me that the exact tech billionaire who's supporting him, Elon Musk, is also the guy creating all the automation. I would love to be rich enough that I could be against the own technology that I'm inventing. So, I find that
He'll just
fascinating.
get on a rocket and leave if he needs
Yeah,
to.
right. So, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that he seemed incapable of interrupting Bernie Sanders in the debates. Like, if you
Mm.
can't interrupt Bernie Sanders, you probably shouldn't be ruler of the world.
Uh, Last question. Let's bring it back to you because you talk about how you get
Because I'm running for
upset.
president as of now. I'm announcing it on the Bad Crypto podcast.
Altucher. Well, this isn't going to be on
This is
Bad
the Joel
Crypto.
Com
This is the Joel
podcast.
Com show, but we'll let the Bad Crypto folks know as well. Actually, I think we'll take that little piece that we talked about Bitcoin and crypto and put that in the show in Bad Crypto as well. You talk about getting obsessed with things. Is there something now that you're toying with that you think this could be my next obsession?
Well, for a few years now, it's been comedy. Like
Right.
I mean, I did it last night. I'm doing it tonight, and then going to Cincinnati tomorrow and doing 6 shows in Cincinnati, and then the week after next. So next week I'll do like 3 or 4 shows, and the week after that I'm doing 5 or 6 shows in Amsterdam. So to do that requires a level of obsession.
You're committed to that. That's like you're going to do that until you're not.
But also, I've been reinvigorated lately by my own podcast. I recently went from 2 episodes to 4, and I've been playing with different formats, and I write every day. I'm working on a book that I'm very very happy with, which is being traditionally published, which I don't normally do, and it's coming out essentially a year from today. But
Any
very
hints about it?
yeah, yeah, it's called Skip the Line, and it's kind of about a little bit about some of the things we were talking about, how basically how whether you're young or old or whatever, how to find your passion and basically kick ass at it no matter what everyone else is telling you. Like if you're 55, if you say, "Oh, I'm going to move to Hollywood and be an actor." A lot of people are going to tell you, "Joel, come on, you can't do that. You needed to start when you were 20." You're going to have a million people tell you you can't do it. You'll even have actors also tell you you can't do it because they don't want you skipping the line. So the book's called Skip the Line, and it's basically how to find the basket of things you really love doing and that you could be obsessed by, and how to get great at it really quickly. Like no, throw out the 10,000 hour rule. I have something I'm calling the 10,000 experiment rule, which you could implement much faster, and if you do it right. And yeah, that's essentially the book.
Love it.
Yeah, it's gonna
Can't
be
wait to
fun.
see it.
And for every interest I've ever had, I had to very quickly skip the line with everybody telling me you can't do this. I started investing professionally in 2001 or actually even in 1999, and I had to very quickly. So I was bad at it at first, and I had to very quickly get good at it without an MBA, without working ever at a bank, without ever working at an investment firm. I got good at it quickly. Software, I switched majors formally my senior year of college. I had to get good at it quickly. Everyone said, "You can't do this." The guidance people, whatever, you're not allowed to do that. You can't do this. I had to get good at it quickly. And then I wanted to go to grad school. I went to grad school I, published research by the time I was a senior. So every industry I've ever been in, I wasn't an entrepreneur, and I built a business very quickly. I had to learn how to be one. I built a multi-million revenue profitable business on my first go around at it, and it was tough. Like I hated it, but I had to learn. So I had to skip the line.
But Gladwell would say you're an outlier and that your path is not duplicable for others.
Well, but I think he would be wrong. So he also though said the normal path is the 10,000 hour rule. But I don't I've spent so much, and I've spoken many times to Anders Ericsson, who is the professor behind the 10,000 hour rule. He wrote a book called Peak. He's been on my podcast. In 1992, I was actually part of some of the initial experiments to sort of prove or theorize the 10,000 hour rule because I'm a chess master. So he did a lot of studies on chess grandmasters, masters, and amateurs, and I was one of them. And I just don't believe, other than for repetitive tasks, I don't believe the 10,000-hour rule. And I think you can repeat this kind of success with the methods I'll describe in my book. But first and foremost is to think of things in terms of experiments rather than time you put in. And so then it's all about how to design the right experiments that will propel you the most forward in the fastest amount of time with the least amount of money.
Watch for James' book, Skip the Line, in 2021. I feel like there's just endless rabbit holes with you. And I want to say your name with a French accent, James Altucher.
That's correct. My sister lived in France for a long time, so she said it's much better there. Altucher or Altucher.
Altucher.
So,
Très bien. Thanks, James. Really appreciate it.
but the real way to pronounce it is I'll touch her fast. I'll touch her. Not safe for work.
Yeah, not safe for work and get you in trouble. Somebody's going to need a safe space now.
Yeah, you